Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Man of Thought, aka the Villain of Truth, aka the Black Panther of Nigeria. If you're just joining me, if you're going to be joining me, please do subscribe to the channel. Do not watch this conversation without subscribing. This is the Man of Thought. Today we are going to be discussing about inevitable suffering. I will be giving about 10 minutes for my audience who wants to join me live. That's what I'm going to be doing today. If you're going to be joining me, I would appreciate you joining me. And I'm giving 10 minutes for people who want to join. If possible, 15 minutes, if possible, 20 minutes, until we dive into today's topic, today's conversation. I think I started a little bit late today. I should have started around maybe what's the time? I should have started around maybe 8 p.m., 8 a.m. or 8:30. Okay, someone has shown like. I think this is how it's supposed to be. Thank you very much for joining. Please, let's just give a few minutes for others to join me. Today, we are going to be having a great conversation, and part of it is going to be on inevitable suffering. This is part of the conversation we are going to be having. Welcome to the Man of Thought. This is part of my audience for sure. Because those people who were joining me before, I wasn't sure. Maybe I was speaking in a language they never understood. So if you're joining me right now, please double tap your screen and show some likes before we proceed on today's conversation. Maliko Sundaya, welcome to the Man of Thought, aka the Villain of Truth, aka the Black Panther of Nigeria. Today we are going to be talking about inevitable suffering, and you're welcome to today's service. Welcome to the only cultural and African traditional evangelical ministry, the only technological church that does not require you that you have to pay offering and tithes. Welcome, everyone. So please, let's just give a few minutes for those who are going to be joining us, because today's subject, trust me, if you say last week's conversation was interesting, wait for today on. Wait and listen to what the Man of Thought has to discuss with you. And then you will say, there is God, though, like Patience Jonathan, our former president's wife. There is God, though. Those are the... We are going to be having good conversation today. Thank you for those who are joining. Please, let's just give about 2 minutes more to see if people are going to be joining for them to get notified. I started a bit late today. It was not your fault. It was my fault. Because normally, my service starts from 8:30. When I call it service, like I'm actually operating a church. I'm not operating a church. I'm just doing based off cultural, traditional, religious, spiritual, technological. I'm just mixing them all up together. So please, if you're joining, double tap your screen and show some likes. Simple. I've seen 3 people show their support by showing likes. That means it's remaining 6 people who haven't shown like. Please do support, because it helps to notify others that I am back on live. Maliko Sondaya, this is 12. This is what I'm saying. I'm like, what did they happen before? I know they see my people on live now. And I'm telling them to double tap their screen. They're not. I'm saying, is this my audience? Are this my audience? I had to cancel and start all over again. Double tap your screen, show some like. We have 12 people. In the next 1 minute, we are going to be starting today's conversation. Let's make the likes get to at least 5. 5 likes. 5 likes. That's what today is the requirements. I'm not asking you for offering. If I did not ask you to pay offering, then you should be able to double tap your screen and show support that, okay, we are hearing you. Even if you are not accepting what I'm saying, at least show the support. At least show the support. Don't be greedy. You are not paying tithe. You are not paying offering for the man of God. I am not saying that, oh, the Lord has called me to speak to you. Simple thing. Show like. Don't be greedy. Don't mind me. This is our African blood. It gets as it do us. We have 19 people joining us live. So we're about to start in the next 30 seconds. But that 30 seconds, within that 30 seconds, you have to double tap your screen and show like. Biko. Biko simply means please. Mo folorun be is I'm begging you with the name of God. You did not go to church. You most likely want to listen to the man of thoughts. Double tap your screen and show support and show likes. We have to get to 5 likes for us to be able to start today's conversation. 5 likes. That is the requirement from the spirits. You don't know which spirits. Maybe it's the cultural spirits. Maybe it's the Holy Spirit. Any spirit. But that is the requirement for us to start today's conversation. We have 3 on ground. Let's make it 5. 5 likes is the requirement for today's conversation to begin. We have exceeded time. 5 likes is the requirement for today's conversation for us to begin. We have 4. 1 more to go, and we begin today's conversation. 1 more likes to go, and we start today's conversation. Maliko Sundaya. It has completed 5. Welcome everyone to the Man of Thought, aka the Villain of Truth, aka the Black Panther of Nigeria. And I welcome you to today's live stream. Welcome also to the only cultural and African traditional evangelical ministry, the Technological Church. The church that tells you what it sees. Simple. What I see is what I say. So, it is good that some of us are not in church. It is good that some of us are with our phone. Let's just listen to certain people. I might not be the smartest person, but trust me, I have something to say, and I think it's worth thinking about. Today's subject, we are going to be talking about inevitable suffering. And before we truly dive into the subject, we need to ask ourselves a question. Are you that are watching me, are you suffering? Am I part of the person who is speaking to you, or the person, the individual who is speaking to you? Am I suffering? Who out of every single one of us is not suffering at the moment or have not suffered in the past? Have we asked ourselves certain questions? Why are we suffering as people? You know, some people would say, I just want my peace. I just want to be peaceful. I just want to enjoy my life. When people begin to say such statements, you know that even within their peaceful time, they still suffer. The married people suffer for their marriage. The single people suffer for not getting married. The person who has child will complain that they have children, that is why they are suffering. The person who don't have child will say they are barren, so they are suffering. Those who have a job says that their job is so stressful and they are suffering. Those who don't have a job says that they don't have a job to take care of their family, so they are suffering. The president is suffering. Militaries are suffering. Citizens are suffering. Sufferness everywhere, suffering galore. And most times we start asking ourselves, why are we suffering? A lot of us are just looking for an escape route from our suffering. When you are welcome to life and the day they name you, you see, the first thing you need to understand is the day they give birth to you, the first thing the doctor does is to, if you did not cry, Doctors will beat you. They will beat the hell out of you, so you make noise. You have to cry. Why? Welcome to the world of suffering. In fact, the only way we know you are alive is that you face some challenges and you suffer. So that person, any individual who is seeking for peace, no wonder certain smart people say that the only time you can actually have peace, they call it RIP. In life, the only time you know you are alive is the struggles of life. And in the struggles of life, we all suffer. In fact, before we go into the religious perspective, we have to look into the Buddhist perspective, because when it comes to the African culture, our ancestors, Orunmila and Oodua, did not specifically discuss much on suffering. I always tell people that I value my culture, I value my traditions, I value a lot of things, but there are certain things in our culture, and I will admit it, that our own ancestors, Oodua, the ones who come with Ifa, they didn't discuss much on suffering. But when we go through Buddhism, Buddhism discuss much on suffering. When you go through religious perspective, when it comes to Christianity, they talk about suffering. The only thing that is the dilemma of all this whole situation is that a lot of us, regardless of the fact that suffering is here in our life, and we experience it regardless of any choice we make. You do this or you do that, you will suffer. You decide to give or you decide to be greedy, you will suffer. You have the whole money in life or you don't have money at all, you will suffer. You know, before they would tell us that people who kill themselves are suffering, so they suffer because there's no food, no water. You see people hang themselves and they take their life. But we have also seen people who have everything, they desire in life, yet they suffer. And the question is, why are they suffering? They don't even know. So let us ask ourselves, why are we suffering? Like I said earlier, both you being religious, both you being cultural, both black, both white, all of us are suffering on different scale. And some people, the only reason why our suffering is great is simply because we amplify the suffering. And the question is this: how do we actually amplify suffering? We amplify suffering by not admitting why we are suffering, by not having the understanding behind our suffering, by trying to run away from our suffering. Earlier this week, I had some conversations with men, and I told men that we have to go through pain in life. For men to be called men, they have to go through certain challenges in life. Part of the challenges is that for you to be a man, that you can put food on the table, that you can protect your family, that you can show your loved ones you are truly there for them, you have to suffer. Suffering is inevitable. It makes you resilient. It makes you have strength. It makes you dependable. Who wants to put their life in the hands of a man that has not witnessed suffering before? Show me a man of good character that has not suffered before. Trust me, you wouldn't find anyone. Suffering is so much important because it builds us to be better people. But in reality, a lot of us, we want to dodge suffering like we are Matrix, like we are Neo. For those of you who have watched Matrix that Andrew Tate always talk about, you see that when they are shooting that Neo, when they shoot him with gun, he's always dodging the bullet. He waves his hand and he dodges the bullet. Some people are trying to dodge suffering. You don't dodge suffering. Suffering is part of you. As long as you accumulate flesh by the food you eat and you grow gradually, suffering is part of you. The problem why a lot of people amplify the suffering in their life is simply because rather than them to admit why they are suffering and understand the purpose behind their suffering, what they do is they lay blame on people. Some people will blame the government. Most times when you go to society and you discuss with people, a lot of people are special in the idea of blaming every other person for their suffering, but they never look within themselves. The government is the reason why we are suffering. Children are the reason why we are suffering. Not having children is why we are suffering. Fuel prices is why we are suffering. All these things are just excuses. Let me say this. Suffering is number one part of our nature, and we need to understand that the reason why we remain in suffering so much is basically because a lot of us are unconscious. And when I use the word unconscious, some people think that unconsciousness or being unconscious simply means you must be in the hospital laying on the bed. Some people think that being unconscious simply means that they must put oxygen in your nose. You must be in another realm. That is what it means to be unconscious. Unconsciousness is of different scale, and consciousness is also of different level. The idea for us to evolve in life simply means that we go from an unconscious state to a conscious state. You can be walking in life, you might be eating in life, you might be playing with your friends in life, you might be playing with your children in life, you might be playing with every single person and be participating fully in society, but you can be very unconscious. No wonder there's a difference between that which suffers and there's what we call miserable people. What is the meaning of miserable? Miserable person is that which does not even understand why he's suffering. And in today's society, a lot of you would agree with me that we have a lot of miserable people. I am suffering, but I do not know the purpose why I'm suffering. When you don't understand the reason behind your suffering is amplified. It operates on a different scale. In the idea, when we look at people who we call heroes as humans, those who we consider to be heroes in our life, a lot of us say, I want my child to do great in life. And then you begin to teach your children about history. And when you teach your children about history, the things you want to talk is the things that happened in the past and how certain heroes were able to save certain individuals in the past. But a lot of us, we want to live life. We don't want to be part of the heroes. In fact, some of us would only appreciate the heroes, but we don't want to be part of those heroes. Part of the people, I remember the time when Nelson Mandela died, a lot of people were clapping their hands. Oh, Nelson Mandela was great. First time they released Nelson Mandela from prison, a lot of people were clapping. Oh, he's a great man. When he died, when he was a president, everyone was saying he's a great man. The question is this: don't you want to be great? A lot of us wish for greatness, but we don't want to undergo what great people has undergo. That is the reason why you are where you are. Suffering is of two types: conscious suffering and unconscious suffering. Conscious suffering simply means a suffering that makes you to be great. Unconscious suffering is the suffering that makes your life miserable. We want to talk about great people, we talk about Abraham in the Bible. We want to talk about great people, we talk about Malcolm X. I see when people start talking about Black Lives Matter in the Western culture, Black Lives Matter. There are certain people who have set the platform for you guys to be able to flourish. People like Martin Luther King, people like Malcolm X. We now ask yourself a question: Why is it that most of the in the Western culture, most of the blacks there, why are they not progressing? It seems they've been on one particular level and they've been able to build the society, but why are they not moving up again? It is simply because nobody wants to carry the mantle of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. No one wants to die. No one wants to suffer. And so what do? They start blaming. It is our hip hop that is the problem. Hip hop is one of the problem. The black people did not love each other. They give all kinds of excuses, but one thing they would never do is look into themselves and say, we are the problem. We are not being conscious. We are not trying to consciously suffer to fight for what we believe in. Rather, we want to put the blame on the government. Oh, the black people are under attack. Yes, I sympathize with you because these are my African brothers and sisters, and we share the same ancestral past. And I understand that I want the black people to come back home, but you have to understand that there are duties and responsibilities that you have to take as a person. In fact, there were a lot of people who told me at some point, they would say that Africans are not accepting the black Americans. And I looked into it, I said, this needs to be a subject that we begin to discuss. These things simply means that we have to consciously liberate our brothers and sisters, because you cannot have freedom without making a change. Martin Luther, what did they call his name? Bob Marley says, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our mind. What does that statement mean? You have to take the mantle and you have to be conscious of yourself to liberate yourself from certain situations you find yourself. Now, in your freedom, there is still going to be suffering. The question is this: are you suffering consciously or are you unconsciously suffering? And I would agree that a lot of people are miserable because they decide to stay on the unconscious suffering path, because the unconscious suffering is very easy. All you have to do is to blame people. And that's why most of the blacks today, we still blame the colonizers, we blame the white, we blame this, we blame that, except ourselves. That's the thing, we can't blame ourselves. We are responsible for allowing this to happen to us. Our ancestors also make this mistake. Yes, we did this. Yes, we did this. We know. To blame somebody else for our miserable life, it is the easiest thing. But that's an unconscious mentality, not to be able to hold yourself responsible for what you actually allow. Because when you hold yourself responsible for what you allow, then you want to make the change. And sometimes I call the blacks the same people who will call me privately and tell me about the issues. I've met with a lot of blacks who have called me privately, and we spoke at length on why the blacks are going through what they are going through, how they need to come back to Africa, how we need to start, educating our African brothers and sisters so they would welcome our black lost brothers and sisters in the Western culture, how we can bring them back. But when it comes to the idea that you have to come on live, I'm not asking you for anything. Most of you are using unlimited data. I subscribe my router because I'm in Nigeria. We rarely have unlimited. I subscribe my router every week, and I'm telling you, brothers and sisters, come on live, let's discuss these issues so that people can be aware, so our African brothers can treat you differently. Most of them would deny. They will say they are not coming. Look at what Malcolm X went through. Look at what Martin Luther King went through. Just for you to come to the technology age and speak about what your experiences are, you only complain to me like I can make the change in the world. Some people talk to me like I am the president of Nigeria or the president of Africa. And I'm like, we have to start with discussion. What is the purpose of the conversation is to make people aware. We have to create the awareness. Even in a civil society, some of them will say, if I talk about what the blacks are doing and the rest of it, they are going to bash me. They are going to abuse me. I'm like, you want a change? Have you ever seen someone who actually make a change in life and they are not being bashed even by their people? The Jesus Christ syndrome that is disturbing a lot of Africans today, that everybody is shouting, even in Israel, where Jesus came from, the Jews did not accept him as the Savior or as Messiah. We will carry it on our head. Till date, the people where he came from, the family where he came from, they did not so much acknowledge him. So why are we so afraid to speak up the truth? Why are we afraid not to be conscious? Let it not look as if I come here to blab. Let me show you a few things from the scripture. Second Corinthians chapter 4, verse 17. It says, for our light affliction, which is but for a moment, worketh for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. For our light affliction, I repeat, for our light affliction. What's the meaning of light here? When something is just, it's not that heavy, not that thick. It's just light, simple. For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, worketh for us far more exceeding an eternal weight of glory. What is this particular scripture talking about? It is talking about what we go through as people. Whatever you think is so serious because of the afflictions you are going through, these are light affliction. If there is a light affliction, what does it mean? It means it is a momentary thing. But if you can make a decision to make that change, there is going to be a better tomorrow. There is going to be a glory. The idea of all our suffering is to liberate ourselves and others. Some people, the only reason why they have a lot of problem is this. They do not understand that suffering is part of our nature. And because suffering is part of our nature, we are actually born to suffer. And every time you are becoming more conscious in life, unconsciousness part of you begin to fight the conscious part of you. In fact, the work of unconscious mentality is to resist conscious mentality. The moment you begin to grow in spiritual aspect, the body begins to resist. Why? Because the body does not want the change. There's a statement that people say, they say the devil you know is better than the angel you don't know. That statement goes in many places. It also goes to the aspect of you knowing that the comfort zone you know is better than the uncomfort zone. But the duty for you to become more conscious is for you to resist your unconscious side, and you have to grow by force. You have to make the change. And everything we go through as people, it is all but for a moment. Some people understand this particular statement to say that everything is a season. Life is a season. There's a season for everything and the rest of it. See, let me tell you, there is a season. There's certain things that would never change. As much as the Bible talks about all kinds of seasons, there are seasons or there are things in life or principles in life that would never change. Part of the things that would never change is this: suffering would never change in life. It is part of us. It is part of our reality. But a lot of us are resisting our reality. And when we are not accepting our reality, how can we make a change? It is totally impossible. Let us read First Peter chapter 4, verse 12. It talks about, and it says, Beloved, think it's not strange concerning the fiery trials which is to try you, as though some strange thing happened to you. Beloved, I repeat, beloved, think it's not strange concerning the fiery trial which is to try you, as though some strange thing happened to you. What is this particular passage talking about? It is talking about you understanding that the unconscious suffering you are going through, it looks unfamiliar. It seems strange to you. Why are you going through this suffering? And this thing is to make sure it tries you over and over again until you make a conscious decision to do what is right. And every time a lot of people keep questioning themselves, why am I not happy? And sometimes I look at the mentality of those who says, I want to be happy. I always want to be happy. And I'm like, what's wrong with you? Do you think life is about happiness? Do you think life is about joy? These things are just part of life. You can suffer and you can enjoy at the same time. The moment you understand the purpose behind your suffering and you admit that there are certain sufferings that are inevitable and you understand the purpose, the meaning behind your suffering, it changes automatically and it doesn't become suffering anymore. But a lot of people, we do not understand the purpose behind our suffering. Women go through suffering, men go through suffering. I would go further on this particular aspect. Let us look at few things. We have to ask ourselves, I think I've spoken about this, we have to ask ourselves, what is the causes of suffering? And one of the things I wrote down is that one of the causes of suffering is not accepting what is in front of you or your current situation. It is a refusal of any unpleasant emotions or rejections or reality. The causes of suffering, I repeat, it is not accepting what is in front of you. Your current situation, it is a refusal of any unpleasant emotion, a rejection of reality. You know, I've spoken to a lot of ladies, I've spoken to a lot of men. Some women will say, I don't want to get married. I don't want to get married. Marriage is hell of a work. Marriage is hell of a duty. I am not willing to get married. And I leave them, I say, no problem. So how are you doing with life? We thank God we are pushing it. I'm like, if marriage is suffering and now you are alone, you should be happy and you should be rejoicing. You don't sound to be happy. Why? Yorùbá will say ọ̀kọ́ pọ̀ bí ọ̀kí rọ̀rọ̀. I've also heard men say this. Good morning, Debbie Murdoch. Good morning, Ma. Good morning, sir. Good morning, everyone. I've heard people say this, even men. They say, I don't want to get married. Marriage is suffering. It is not nice. It is a challenge. blah, 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 blah. And I tell them, I say, okay, if you're not going to get married, there's no problem. How is life for you? How is life going? I expect them to jump in joy. I expect them to be celebrating. I expect them to be very happy that since they are not getting married, since they are not suffering, since they think that suffering, getting married is suffering, I expect you to be rejoicing and be dancing, yet they are miserable. There are certain suffering in life that we as human beings, we have to necessarily and consciously put ourselves through those suffering. There is a lot of suffering that a lot of us have to consciously put ourselves through those things, because we can never be trusted by life. We can never be trusted by nature. We can never be trusted by society. We can never be trusted by families. We can never be trusted by friends if we have not gone through those suffering. No wonder when married people are speaking and a single person comes and he says, oh, my perspective on marriage, everybody is like, keep quiet. You know nothing. Because until you have the experience, you are not qualified to speak on that subject. I've seen people who kind of tell me that I'm single as a lady. I'm single as a lady, but I love children. You know nothing about children. If you are old enough to get married, if you are grown up enough, even as a man, to get married, don't tell me that you love children. You don't. Whatever you are not willing to suffer for, you can't love it. Most people are only saying all these things because they want to be politically and society correct by the words of their mouths. You want to tell somebody that you love them, you find a lady that you love, or you find the man that you love. You want to tell the person you love them, but you don't want to compromise for them. You don't want to make yourself sometimes uncomfortable. You always want to be comfortable. How do you call that love? Oh, children would, the world is suffering enough. And so that's the reason why I don't want to have children. Excusez-moi. All those statements are excuses. Why not make the world a better place and have children so they can experience your work? When we deny our suffering, we suffer the more. Someone says, okay, there's a statement that says, so we can focus, that's the purpose of suffering, says, so we can focus and turn inward to face those parts of ourselves we might ignore. One of the purpose of suffering is so we can focus and turn inward to face those parts of ourselves we might ignore. Those are the purpose behind suffering. The idea why some of us repeat the same angle in life, suffering on only one particular stage, it simply means we are very unconscious. And because we are suffering in that particular stage, the purpose why we are suffering, most times, it is basically because we have refused to look inward. Because there's a difference between pain and there's a difference between suffering. Pain can easily be physical. Suffering are emotional. Suffering are things from the mind. When you are making decisions to ignore your reality, when you are refusing to look inward, these are part of the reasons why your suffering are amplified. And all you can do, all right, bye-bye. Yeah, bye. Yeah, bye-bye. All the church goers are going to church. Except me. So the purpose behind suffering is that a lot of people have refused to look inward. And when you refuse to look inward, to reflect on yourself, and you ask yourself, what is it? What is the meaning behind my suffering? You know, the Buddhists, they have different statements when it comes to the idea of suffering. Part of the noble truth of Buddhist philosophy is that life is suffering, number one. The second, I think Buddhists have 4 philosophy. When I looked into Buddhist, do I call it religion? But part of their philosophy is that they have 4. Life is suffering, attachment to desire causes suffering, suffering ends with the attachment to desire, and the 8-fold path is the path to liberation from suffering. But when they say the statements, looking at those Buddhist philosophy, using the word that life is suffering, my question is this. Sometimes if you believe in certain things, those things will work for you. So when you look at the Buddhists, they already admit on suffering. But I would say this, suffering is part of life. I wouldn't say life is suffering. Suffering is part of life. So I disagree most times with the definition of Buddhists. But one of the things they say, part of their second philosophy, is to talk about the attachment to desire causes suffering. And the question is that, what do we desire as people? Some of us desire to be happy. And when we ask yourself, how can you be happy? Most people, when they tell me that all I want in my life is to be happy, sometimes I've asked them questions and I'm like, what would make you happy? What do you want to do, or what do you want to do that is constantly going to make you happy? Most of them cannot wrap their head around what will make them happy. What makes you happy is simple. You have to go through a meaningful suffering. A suffering where you understand the purpose behind it. Because if I ask you and you say you want to be happy always, the question is what? It simply means you want to be irresponsible when you say you just want to be happy. What are the things you have to do that will always constantly make you happy? You want to eat food, then you have obesity, then you have diabetics. You want to take alcohol, then you become an alcoholic. You want to go to the club. What is your benefit in society? Apart from humans having sex, apart from humans eating, apart from humans drinking, apart from these 3 things and rejoicing with your people, please tell me another type of enjoyment that is on earth. Sex, food, drink. Let's just even put it, food and drink is the same thing. Sex, food, and rejoicing with people. Tell me what other excitement is on earth. Nothing. Every category of the kind of rejoicing and happiness you are seeking for falls under these 3. They all fall under these 3. Sex, food, joy, dancing with people, everything fall under these 3. So the question is this: if these are the 3 major things that gives you happiness in life, what are you doing that is going to make your life meaningful? Because when you keep repeating this particular circle over and over, you get fed up. And so I see people, they say, I don't want to have children. Children are going to make me suffer, and I don't want to see children suffer. When people say the words that I don't want to have children because I don't want to see children suffer, I'm like, look at you. Oh, you don't know what you are saying. I don't want to have children because I don't want to see children suffer. The question is this: you are not willing to suffer. How can you predict for a child that the child is going to suffer? And who have you seen on the surface of this earth? Since the time of Jesus Christ, before the time of Jesus Christ, Adam and Eve, according to the Bible, which of them did not suffer? Show me a human being you know on the surface of this earth that you've known for the past 3 years or 2 years or 1 year that have not gone through suffering of one thing or the other. We don't want to have children. Children are so unique and innocent. We don't want them to suffer. You don't want to be responsible. Simple. Just say it. And then they put another system. Marriage is so toxic. Men masculinity is so evil. And the men too will say that women are so evil. Women are extorting. So I don't want to get married. But I want to date. They want to eat their cake and have it. They want to eat apple that does not come from the tree. When you don't even understand why you are miserable, why would you encourage yourself to go through meaningful suffering? You are still very unconscious. Some people would use excuses and say that as a child, when I was a child, I was being traumatized by my parents. I was being traumatized by life. Something bad happened to me, and that is the reason why I make the decision. See, there are late hours in life. We understand these things. There are places you get in life, it becomes too late. And if it is late for you, I understand. But also you have to own the idea that you made it late. You are responsible for what you are simply because you are trying to avoid the necessary suffering you are supposed to go through. Like call the government. If you become the president today, most of us who complain about our government, if we become the president today, we will still suffer. There's no escape route to it. We will still suffer. I will read something where the Bible talks about suffering, the last one, and it talks about, maybe this will be the last passage of the Bible that I will talk about. And this is James chapter 1, 2 to 4. And James chapter 1, 2 to 4 says that, my brethren, count it all joy. Am I speaking good English? My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptation. Number 2, which is number 3, says that knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience. And it says, but let patience have a perfect work, that ye may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing. I'm still going to read 2 to 4 again. And it says, my brethren, count it all joy when ye fall into diverse temptation, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience. But let patience have a perfect work, that ye may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing. What is this particular passage talking about? It's talking about the idea. First of all, it is speaking that suffering is definitely inevitable. But it's saying when you are suffering, understand the meaning behind the suffering. Every time you understand the meaning behind your suffering, it is no more suffering. It becomes fulfillment. Some people would ask questions and they say, what is the purpose? Why are we here? The purpose of life is so you suffer. Suffering is part of your purpose in life, but this suffering must have a meaning. And when you get the meaning behind the suffering, then you can liberate not just yourself, but you can liberate other people. I always remember certain situations where I might lay down on bed, and when I lay on bed, I might just want to rest. I might have been stressed up and I just want to rest. And then my daughter will start screaming. Nyah! Initially, when my children cry and they make all these voices, I was always upset. Like, why are these children troubling my life? And then it occurred to me at some point to say that, do I want to have a house that, or a home that does not have children? How can I truly enjoy a life without children? Part of the costs of having the children is sometimes I will be deprived of my sleep. Part of the idea of having children is at the fact that sometimes I would have to work even when it is not comfortable. But which one would I have preferred in my life? To live a life without children? To have a home without children? And trust me, I have never heard, and this particular thing, I've experienced it in the words of people who speak. A lot of people who are remaining single, who have decided not to get married, or who have decided not to get or not to have children, there's a word they always say. No matter how wealthy they are, they will say, in my house. They specifically talk about my house. And I observe that when the married people who have children, when they want to talk, they say, my home, when I go home, when I move home, when I get home, my children will be waiting for me at home. I have to go home. These are the mentality. That means they have a house, but that house has been filled with certain kind of responsibility, suffering, and joy, and meaningful life, and they call that a home. Those who have houses, who have refused to be married, those who have houses, who have refused to bear certain responsibility, they always have house. They never have home. Why? They belong to nowhere. It is easy for them to move from this place to this place, from this place to this place. There's a neighbor of mine that I have. That guy, in 1 year, he rented house in almost 5 places. In 1 year. 1 year. He's over 42 years old. He's not married. Me, with my children, how can I do that? When my nation is not under war, how can I move to 5 places within 1 year? When I'm not going for shopping. But these are the mentality. And I ask him, no matter the house he have, there is always an issue. He thinks that the problem is with the house. He doesn't know that the problem is with himself. He's trying to seek for meaning. He's trying to seek for peace. He's trying to seek for a meaningful life to his suffering. And then he's blaming the house. Oh, he will just look at the house. No matter what you do in that house, he will find one mistake. The tiles are not doing well. The roofing sheets are not smelling nice. These are not doing this. Electricity is not doing. The AC is perceiving some odor. All kinds of meaningless excuses. He has a friend, and that friend is directly opposite my building. He rented as him. His friend has 2 kids. His friend, in the friend's house, is also experiencing leakages from his roof. They've called all kinds of people to replace it. They have not been able to find solution. But this particular person stays there. Why? I can still manage it. is still a beautiful place. Regardless of the imperfections of the house, it is still a home. When you have meaning to your suffering, you would suffer in joy. And when the Bible was saying, count it all joy when ye fall into diverse temptation, whenever you are going through trials in life, you know there's a reason behind it. You know the meaning behind it. And once you know the meaning behind it, it gives you joy. I could remember when I was being put to jail by the dirty real estate organization. First thing that spoke up to my mind is, if I wasn't saying anything, if I was cowards like a lot of people, I would be in my house rejoicing. I would have been in my comfort zone. I would be happy. But why these people keep extorting the whole community? But because I make a decision to make a change, now I found myself in jail. Was it painful? Yes, it was. But when I came out, in the whole of this estate, an estate that worth over 500 acres of land, whereby their houses we have over 1,000 something buildings. In the whole 500 landlords that are on platform, when I speak, regardless of the chairman, regardless of anybody in the estate, when I speak, everybody listen. If I say no, no matter what they say, regardless of the constitution they have, when I say no, everybody had ear to that no. And I know some people will say, is that possible? Are you exaggerating? That's not exaggeration. I live in an estate they call Treasure Island Estate. When you ask them about vision. My name in the estate, they call me Vision. When I speak, nobody changes it. You know why? I have proved what none of them are willing to undergo. And then they understand that this guy is willing to go to the last bus stop to make a statement the moment he believes in what he's doing. There was a time a lot of stuff was going. I exited the platform. When I exited the WhatsApp platform, it didn't take 2 months. Everybody started exiting. Even yesterday, we had a meeting. Everybody was exiting. That is the idea of suffering. When you suffer, people entrust you. When you suffer for a meaningful thing, people begin to believe in you. At least you have taken a step forward. You have shown them that you're willing to sacrifice anything to make sure there's a change. People can trust what you say. You don't want to suffer. You want to have the glory. Sorry for you. And here's what Bible says. In verse 5, James 5, it says that if any of you lack wisdom, because when people suffer, it's basically because they don't have sense. When people suffer, and when I talk about suffering, I'm talking of two types of suffering. I talk about the conscious suffering and the unconscious suffering. The unconscious suffering is the miserable life a lot of people have. And the Bible is saying this. If you are suffering, it is basically because you lack sense. If you do not understand the meaning behind your suffering, it is basically because you have a low IQ. And the problem a lot of people have in today's society is that they think that because they are educated, that means they are wise, they are knowledgeable. Education only has a pattern. And I'm not diminishing the value of education. Just because you go to a school, just because you went for an institution, and you have a PhD, BSc, HIV, STD, whatever you have as a profession or as a certificate does not mean that you have wisdom. It simply means that you have been programmed to see certain things in certain areas. That is the work of the society. The society programmed you. That doesn't mean. Then let me ask you a question. Do you think the society has ever programmed anyone to be a wise person? Tell me one person that the society has programmed to be a wise human being. Is Elon Musk a graduate? Is Bill Gates a graduate? Look at all those people who have made a lot of change. Are they graduates? Malcolm X, who fought for the black people, is he a graduate? Frederick Douglass, who was fighting for people, what are his qualifications? Some people, they will have to only go to school so they can be reconfirmed by the society. Education is not set to liberate you. Education is set to make you think in a certain kind of way. They may call it knowledge, they may call it this kind of thing, but it doesn't mean you are wise. It only narrows your ways of viewing things. They want to make you civilized. Civilization without you resisting. They don't want you to resist the programming. And so when the Bible is talking about if any of you lack wisdom, and so there are a lot of people, trust me, this is the reason why you will say most of the people who don't want to get married are the educated people. Why? They have been programmed to see that family is a problem. The moment your brain tells you that family is a problem, know that you need not therapy. You don't need therapy. You need factory reset, brain resets. Your existence came as a result of people coming together. How come did you do your own mathematical equation and that mathematical equation says that family doesn't make sense? And then you stand on it. There was this particular man, I can't even remember his name, who was trying to become part of the people contesting for the US being a president and all of that. And I think some people would know his name. I'm trying to remember his name. The man is very educated, but the man is not married and he did not have children. And, you know, he was at the breakfast club and everybody was, and I was laughing. And he said he wants to be president. I'm like, who the hell wants to have a president that does not have family? It would turn the whole society to gay. The ones that even have family, they are turning the whole society to alphabetical order. LGBTQEAFGWSYZ. They are doing all this kind of thing. More or less, you pick out somebody who does not have a family. How can the nation entrust themselves in you? You haven't undergone the suffering to understand what the society, and society is built by family. Without families, there can't be society. A lot of people who call themselves educated people, you want to enjoy the society that was being built by family, but you want to belittle family and you say family is not compulsory. These are madness. And that means the person lacks sense. When you are wise, you become conscious. There is no unconscious wise man. They can be unconscious foolish people. They can never be an unconscious wise man. When you become conscious, you are going to be able to live. Vivek Vishwa says he's one of my family. Welcome. I endorse you. But in the endorsement, you are the one that will pay. You're welcome, my brother. Vivek Viswa. So the Bible says, if you lack wisdom, it didn't say if you lack intelligence, because there are a lot of intelligent fools. Countless of time, I have spoken to so much intelligent fools. It says, if you lack wisdom, let him ask of God. What does it mean by saying let him ask of God? That giveth to all men liberally, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given to him. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally, and upbraideth not, and it shall give to him. You know, one of the idea I tell people is that when it comes to the idea of God, what is God? God simply means a principle that is aligned with nature. This should have been the concept and the definition of God, but I'm not the one to give that definition. Because God for me simply means principle. And if you read the scripture diligently, the Bible says something. It says, I would honor my word more than my name. What does it mean? I honor principle more than the name you call me. And if you follow through the principle of life, you would flourish. You would do great things. Most people would say, I love God, you want to worship God, but you are not following the principle. And the Bible is saying here that if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God. Now, that doesn't mean that when you say, oh Lord, give me wisdom, then rain of wisdom will just fall upon you. That's not what it means. It means you have to seek for wisdom. Proverb explain more of that. You have to seek for wisdom. And when you seek for wisdom, you will be able to get it. And I think last week I said something when I spoke regarding you staying, wisdom stays at the entrance of a gate. Wisdom stays on a high mountain. All these particular philosophies are indicating that for you to be wise, you have to do certain work. You have to walk in a silent way. There's nothing wrong with you being part of the society, but you also need to be aware that regardless of the fact that you are with society, you have to detach yourself sometimes from society. And for you to be wise, for you to be able to see the flaws in the society, you have to detach yourself and you have to seek wisdom. The solution to our suffering is to understand the purpose behind our suffering. That the purpose behind our suffering is so that it can transform us. Every time we undergo suffering in life, we need to understand that the reason behind it is so that it can transform us. A lot of people want to believe in Jesus, but they don't want to undergo what Jesus has went through. Most of Afrobeat musicians, they want to be like Fela, but they don't want to go through what Fela has gone through. How can you be great? This is the reason why it is rare in today's generation for us to see great people. Why? Most people are not willing to undergo suffering. Look, for example, one of it is actually playing in our life right now, and they call the person Donald Trump. Look at what Donald Trump is undergoing. Donald Trump will go in history as one of the greatest presidents of America. Mark my words. Mark my words. Mark my words. Donald Trump will go in history as one of the best presidents of America. Mark my words. Today is what? 1st of September, 2024. Yes, 12th of September, 2024. Mark my words. And he's not going because he's the one that will change the whole economy of America. America was already great. He's not going to change America's economy and everything is going to be proper. No, but it was going to be great because he fought for something, because he undergoes suffering. Look, just before he became a president, they had to take him to court, put a lot of allegations on him, all kinds of count charges. What he beat Joe Biden. Joe Biden never knew what he was doing. Now it's for him to defeat Kamala Harris. But even before the time of Kamala Harris, they tried to assassinate Donald Trump. Everything he went through just because he believed in his country, that is what is going to make Donald Trump great. Sometimes greatness is not about what you accomplish. Sometimes greatness is what you are willing to go through. That is where you make your mark. A lot of people will talk about Malcolm X to be great. We talk about Frederick Douglass to be great. We talk about Martin Luther King to be great. I have a dream and the rest of it. Does his dream come true? Was he able to accomplish it? But it was a catalyst to speak for something. And he was willing to die for what he believed in. And these are the people who are conscious of the reason why they are suffering, and they are willing to do the work to liberate themselves and to liberate their people. The problem of today's society is a lot of people are suffering within themselves. Why? Because they don't want to be conscious. And like I said earlier, consciousness is resisting the unconscious part of you. And the unconscious simply means, the conscious side simply means you have to resist and you have to transform yourself to be a better version of you. And understand that every time you suffer, there's a purpose behind it. You have to reflect and look within yourself and ask yourself, why am I going through this suffering? What is the meaning behind this suffering? And if the meaning behind your suffering is just because of you, then that means you are not suffering enough. If your suffering is not because of you and other people, your family, your children, your nation, your society, your community, if your suffering is not because of them, then you become miserable. Because your suffering does not have any meaning. When you undergo challenges in life, understand it, that there's a purpose behind it. Some people want to show, hey, I don't want to suffer. And that's the reason why we have the kind of people we have today in society. You would see a lady that her fingernails is like this paper, and she will put it. Why? These people don't know what it is to suffer. They just want to be worshipped. They don't even know the purpose behind their life. And when you are not undergoing through meaningful suffering, what you are going to be doing is you are going to be causing destructiveness to the part of the society. No wonder you will see some guys in hip hop, they will put on chain and they'll be doing like this. I bought a chain of 10 gold, near. And then they put gold in their teeth and you see that they are not undergoing suffering. If you undergo suffering, you develop empathy for other people. You wouldn't carry 20 million and go and put gold chain, gold teeth. I hit chicken. I put a strap. Why? If you understand what suffering is, you would know that putting strap and shooting another person, it is going to cause pain in the life of the family of that person. Don't even consider the person. Consider the family where the person comes from. Consider the mother of the person. Considering the generations where the person comes from. And so a lot of people would say, hip-hop is part of the things that is polluting the society. What are you willing to do about it? When you suffer, know that there's a responsibility for you to do something about your suffering. And the only way for you to do something about your suffering is for you to suffer the more. But you have to have a meaning to why you want to suffer. When there's a meaning behind the suffering is no more suffering. And when you are able to sufferingly move to the next thing, you know that you have a purpose. And that purpose has been fulfilled in the past. Now I know another table will be set before you. None of us will end the suffering of life. The purpose why Jesus came was not to end the suffering of mankind. Anybody who tell you that Jesus was here so he can end the suffering of mankind, say he went to cross to die on the cross of Calvary so we would not die. He did not eat, he was poor so that we will be rich. You are deceiving yourself. He was here to show you that regardless of whatever you are going through, you can become a better version of yourself. You can be kind to the world. You can love your people. You can be generous to the society. You can pray for your enemy. Those are the purpose why Jesus came. He did not come to end your suffering. With that being said, I hope I've been able to convince and not to confuse you. The purpose behind your suffering was made to be part of nature. If there's any question you have, please throw it to me. I'm giving about 1 minute if there's any question. You know, I'm the only pastor, am I pastor? Cultural pastor, cultural, traditional, religious pastor, who will tell you that after I'm done preaching, you can make sure you ask me questions. Unlike Sunday school services and the rest of it, they wouldn't ask you to ask any question. The pastor just preach and you have to take it. I'm giving a few minutes. If there's no question, then we are rounding up for today. Maliko Sondaya. I'm rounding up, then more people are coming in. These are the set of people who like to share grace when the church is rounding up. Maranatha says, what do you have to say about indoctrination of children and the future of Nigeria? Especially alphabetical people, especially in alphabetical order. You see, what I would say about that is that I think the African culture and tradition is strong enough to resist the LGBTQ, RST, UVWXYZ. African culture is strong enough to resist it. Now, just because it can resist it does not mean it is impossible for it to come in. Because let me say this. Some people think that LGBTQ begins by just indoctrination. Some people do not understand that LGBTQ actually starts from even the food that a lot of people eat. Most of the society where you see all these LGBTQ people, look at what they consume and ask yourself if they are organic or inorganic food. Because you are what you eat. When you begin to eat chemicals, all kinds of chemicals, it begins to affect you that you want to react in a particular kind of way. So when it comes to the idea of indoctrination, I am not saying it's impossible. I think it will be extremely difficult. And it is not in this generation, not 2 generations from now, not 3 generations from now, maybe in the 15th generation. But before then, I think that with the situation that we all can see, that America or the particular countries who have welcomed the idea of alphabetical people, we have seen that those countries are shrinking in numbers. And so they are asking the Africans to come. Right now, the same Nigerians that they call us fraudsters, the same Nigeria that they say we are criminals and the rest of it, now they are calling us to Canada, come and work in the US, come and work in the UK. Once you know this profession, come. In fact, they're even saying if you don't have profession, come. Why? They are reducing in number. And when did we start glamorizing this LGBTQ? It's not up to 10 years or 20 years that we start worshiping LGBTQ community. And within the period of 20 years or 10 years, the society is already shrinking. So when we see the consequence, and when the consequence become more apparent, in the next 5 years, it will be more apparent. And trust me, Donald Trump is against it. If Donald Trump is against it, that means he has seen something. So even when the American president, the same people who legalize it, when they begin to see the consequence of it, and then they are shouting, no wonder they are opening their borders. No wonder Joe Biden is opening his borders. Why? Because they have, when they are no more growing in number, they need other people to come and join the American people. So in Africa, trust me, our culture and tradition is strong enough. Go to even most of our religious parts. Most of our religion, even when they practice Christianity, they only use the Christianity and the Muslim and the religious things to extort people. We still mostly practice our culture and tradition, even in the religion. Who the Truth says everything seemed clear enough. Thank you very much, sir. I never knew you were live. Who the Truth? Shout out to you, my brother. Tyler Dodden says that, what did you think about India and Hinduism? I think it is a beautiful culture and tradition. I think they are on the right path. Are there a few things they need to do to help, to make it a better place? Yes, for sure. The same thing is applicable to Africa. We are on the right path. Do we have challenges with the government, with the leaders? Yes. These are just economical challenges, and they are possible when people begin to take responsibility. Thank you so much, Who the Truth. These are one of my brothers. Those who are encouraging me to pursue and to continue on this particular podcast/live stream. So Hinduism is a very great tradition. It's a great culture. It's a great religion. And Indians are on the right path. Look at Indians, they live long. Who the Truth says, don't you think that Africa needs their own educational system? Well, if you look at Dr. Umar Johnson in the Western culture in America, is also building a school for the Blacks. So I think sometimes some people in the world, they are so dumb to build things for themselves, but when they see examples of others doing few things, they most likely will comply. I think in a period of time, the moment we can get our leaders right and Nigerians can open their eyes clearly to the right things, I think Africans would have their own education system. And like Maranatha was talking about, if we have our African education, it will be difficult. It becomes more impossible for us to adopt any systemic idea of LGBTQ. Maranatha says, how do I judge between the fear of insecurity in Nigeria and the mental indoctrination in the West? I'm really confused. Please, your opinion. How do I juggle? Okay, how do I juggle between the fear of insecurity in Nigeria and the mental indoctrination in the West? I'm really confused. Please, your opinion. Now, here's what you need to know. I wouldn't tell you that African is the best place. I would only say that we have our traditions and culture that actually make sense, and it makes people to have a certain kind of balanced life. when you have some resources with you, it doesn't mean if you are in anywhere you would 100% be happy. It simply means that you can have meaning of your life in certain areas. Now, looking at it, who is that? Okay, looking at it from the idea of Nigeria, for example, when they talk about insecurities, it is most especially a propaganda to make people feel like everywhere in Nigeria is insecure. I'm in Ogun State. I'm outside Lagos. I'm not in Abuja. I'm outside Lagos. Yet, we don't have anything like insecurities here. And the perception they give about insecurities is like certain individuals will just jump to certain individuals' house and start shooting like Rambo. This is the same perception they are selling about the Black Americans to the Africans, simply because if the Black Americans leave the Western culture and they come to Africa, America cannot last. That is the reality. They cannot last because when you look at history, you will realize that a lot of inventions were made by the Blacks. And if the Blacks live there and they come to Africa, they would realize that they would also build Africa up because they've already understand the mentality of the Western people. So all these things they bring on media is just to be able to make sure that Africans and the Black Americans do not completely unite. So they have to divide us by giving us a narration. And this is the reason why we resist LGBTQ in the Western culture and some of the hip-hop way of doing things. They resist the idea that they think that here is a jungle. Nigeria is not a jungle. Insecurities happen in maybe 2 states in Nigeria. And mostly they are in the northerners. Kano. These are 2 states. And we have, what do we call it? We have 36 states in Nigeria. 36. And when 2 states are doing this, they are bandits and insecurity and fighting and calling themselves, what do they call them again? Boko Haram. They make it seem as if the insecurity is everywhere in Nigeria. That's a false narration. So Africa is safe as much as you make inquiry, where can I invest in? How can I come home? What can I do? You are absolutely safe. Except you like traveling, you want to travel the whole 36 states. You want to see in and out of everything. In the Yoruba culture, they will say, what it simply means that if you are trying to see everything, you will see everything. And part of the everything you might see might not be pleasant in certain areas. But when it comes to the Western indoctrination, I think that the education system has been set just to go against the Black people. Most of it, not only, has been set to go against the Black people. And if families begin to unite in the Black America, you guys will succeed. You guys would prosper. So they are putting all this narration because if you guys come together and you love yourself and you are doing things, the only time Black Lives Matter is when somebody dies. When they are dividing people, and it took a time at some point I was looking at what do Black people own, businesses and the rest of it, that Black people truly own in the Western culture. Trust me, I didn't even see one. I didn't even see one. The Jews and the rest of them, those are the people who own a lot of stuff. How come when you are talking about Black billionaires in the Western culture, you are not talking about business people? In Africa, if you talk about billionaires, richest people, you are going to be talking about people who are doing business. But in Western culture, you have to go into arts. music and the rest of it. You have Jay-Z, you have Beyonce, you have Puff Daddy, you have 50 Cent, you have a lot of all these people, but you ask yourself, what do they really own? In Africa, when you have a property, you don't pay tax. I've been in my house for how many years? My father's place, all the places we have house, we don't pay tax. But there, you want to dig borehole, you have to pay tax. You want to buy a dog, you have to pay tax. You want to do this, you have to pay tax and all of that. They have made the society for everything to become so capitalist. Capitalism has become their way of living life. If it is possible for them to sell the air that you breathe, they will sell it for you. The idea of life, how can you enjoy life when every of your struggle is just to pay bill? And most of the Western culture, when you look at all these things, when I hear the kind of amount some people have, some people say, I have about $20,000, but I need to work very well to do, and $20,000 is not even enough for you to be able to do things in your life. When you come to Africa, you can do a lot with it. But can you fix the indoctrination of the Western culture? That can only be possible when the blacks totally come together and begin to take into their political space. The same thing is applicable to Nigeria, for example. I always tell the youth that we have to open our eyes and start going into political space if we actually want to make a change in the political system. But at the same time, we have a responsibility, and the responsibility is that we have to take charge of some of our lands, because most Africans, the same way you are viewing it, Maranatha, the way you are viewing Africans or you are viewing Nigeria, that is how most Nigerian youths too are viewing Nigeria, but all of them are in Lagos. So we have to come out of our shell and do something for ourselves. But in the Western culture, I think that when you guys begin to relate more with the Africans and the rest of it, and you guys go out of that society for a while, I'm not saying you go out of the Western culture, but you can move away and you come back and meet your lost brothers and sisters, and we can build that relationship. You guys would have a different sense of uniting together, and maybe that will foster you guys to start taking charge of your life. There was a mistake from Martin Luther King. When Martin Luther King was fighting for the freedom of the blacks, he wasn't fighting for you guys to have the freedom to own business. It was only fighting for oppression. And now, how far about the oppression? The oppression system still continues. But if he had fought for business, he has fought for you guys to own your own thing, which Muhammad Ali was actually talking about, how the blacks would have their own thing. If he had fought for that, I think you guys would have most likely been in a better place. So how can you understand unity when you haven't experienced? I understand. I listen to Dr. Umar a lot. I always play his stuff for my family too. Yes. Yes. Any question for the day? Any question for the day while we round up? I hope we are good. With that being said, raise your tithe, put your hands in your pockets, raise your offering unto the Lord. Pray into your offering and throw it through the screen. That's what most pastors would have done to you. This is the reason why I enjoy having conversations with people, because we can actually discuss on a lot of stuff and we would liberate ourselves. Thank you very much for everyone who has joined me today. How do you support my channel? You can support my channel. You have already subscribed. You can support the channel by joining membership. You can support the channel. Sometimes there's a, what do we call it? Thanks or something. But I think you can join membership. You can do some donation How do they do their donation? I don't know, but they can do donation if you're using card or stuff. But just join membership. It is part of a way you can support the channel. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining today. I appreciate you, Maranatha. I appreciate you, my brother, Who the Truth, Tyler Dodin from India, Vivek. Thank you, Debbie Murdoch. Thank you very much, and every other person who has joined me today. I appreciate you guys for your patience and for your support. Thank you very much. Thank you, Any Amona. What's her name? I've forgotten her name. She was one of the people who supported. She sent something through Remit, something Reddit Remit support to give me some stuff, and I had to go get a mic so we can have this clear conversation. But thank you, everyone, for your support. I appreciate you all. Have a great day ahead. I will still be live maybe by 5 p.m. There's a possibility I'll be chatting with the enlightened one, and we are going to talk more on spirituality and the rest of it in the evening. But I'm yet to get a feedback from the enlightened one. But if we do, I will reach out and I'll put out a notification to the people. Have a great day. See you. Bye-bye for now. Peace.